On the morning of June 17, 2026, heavily armed personnel from the Bihar Special Task Force surrounded a house in the village of Balaudi. By the time the dust settled, 28-year-old Bharat Bhushan Tiwari was dead. Local authorities quickly moved to control the story. They stated that Tiwari was a dangerous, unhinged suspect who had opened fire on officers, discharging 8 to 12 rounds and leaving the tactical team with no choice but to shoot back. According to the official police reports, this was a lawful use of lethal force. Officers were simply defending their lives against an active, armed threat. If we rely solely on those paper records, the shootout in Balaudi reads like a standard police encounter. But digital evidence recorded that morning contradicts the police files in almost every detail. In the exact moments leading up to his death, Tiwari was broadcasting a live stream on Facebook. The video captures him clearly announcing his intention to cooperate. He actively disarms himself, tossing his pistol into the dirt, directly toward the police line. Eyewitnesses standing nearby corroborate exactly what the camera saw. They report that officers initially accepted the surrender, speaking calmly to Tiwari, before suddenly pushing him to the ground and opening fire. How does a completely disarmed man, whose peaceful surrender is actively being recorded live, end up riddled with bullets? To understand why the STF was at his door in the first place, we have to rewind to the monsoon season of 2025. The Ganga River had swallowed their land, displacing hundreds of families. Tiwari, an educated young man from the area, stepped up to advocate for these refugees. The state administration claimed they had relocated the survivors to a newly designated model township. The reality was a squalid, muddy depression with no clean water, no proper roads, and no legal documents, or patas, giving the displaced families actual ownership of the ground. Tiwari spent months trying to fix this through official channels. He drafted written appeals, walked into government offices, and requested proper compensation. Bureaucrats took his files, nodded, and did nothing. Realizing that quiet paperwork was easily ignored, he picked up his phone. Tiwari started using Facebook Live to broadcast the living conditions, publicly questioning local administrators by name and asking where the government relief funds were going. Systemic silence operates as an incubator. When an administration ignores peaceful legal requests for basic shelter, it creates an environment where sheer desperation takes over. That desperation boiled over on June 15, 2026. After months of being stonewalled, Tiwari crossed a severe legal line. During a live stream, he brandished a pistol and openly threatened a local magistrate, claiming the state was trying to silence him. The next morning, local police moved in to arrest him, but the situation spiraled. Tiwari pulled his weapon and held the local station house officer at gunpoint for 20 minutes. The heavily armed police detachment, unable to safely disarm him, was forced to retreat. A civilian had just forced an entire tactical unit to back down in broad daylight. For the police department, this was a severe public embarrassment. Trying to salvage their reputation, the police issued an official press release that evening. In it, they formally documented Tiwari as mentally unstable, stating he needed to be detained and sent for psychiatric observation. This paperwork effectively authorized the state to treat Tiwari as a psychiatric patient rather than a standard suspect, creating a specific legal lens for the tactical raid the following morning. Which brings us back to 9 a.m. on June 17th, as the Special Task Force rolls into Balaudi in full tactical gear. This graphic compares the physical evidence against the official narrative. The state documented that Tiwari fired a dozen rounds while fleeing, yet the broadcast shows him discarding his weapon, and eyewitnesses confirm there was zero return fire from his end before he was shot. Then there is the medical report. Initial police statements suggested a tactic to simply immobilize a fleeing suspect. However, the attending surgeon discovered 4 to 5 bullet wounds cluster heavily across his thighs and lower legs. Finally, there is a procedural contradiction. If the police department had formally documented him as a mental health patient less than 24 hours earlier, why were non-lethal restraint protocols completely abandoned during his physical surrender? When you align the live broadcast of a man throwing his gun away with a medical report showing multiple tight cluster gunshot wounds, the claim of self-defense dissolves. The physical data points towards an execution. Immediately after the killing, the state apparatus moved to crush any pushback. Police filed severe criminal charges, known as FIRs, not just against the protesting villagers, but against Tiwari's grieving parents and brother. Under intense public scrutiny, the department did suspend 4 officers. However, they were not suspended for shooting a disarmed man. They were penalized strictly for their negligence on June 16th, when they allowed a suspect to embarrass the department. This sparked massive outrage. Thousands of locals flooded the highways around the district, blocking traffic to demand justice for a man who had spent the last year fighting for their land rights. By burying the victim's family and supporters under the weight of legal prosecutions, the authorities created a defensive perimeter around the officers who fired the shots. But the live stream footage was too clear to sweep under the rug. The video forced a rare alignment in Bihar politics, with fierce political rivals publicly uniting to condemn the operation as a fake encounter. The mounting pressure eventually forced the government's hand, leading to a judicial inquiry. Now, the legal battle has reached the Supreme Court, invoking strict guidelines designed to investigate extrajudicial police killings. What happened in Bilauti is part of a much wider pattern. India has a long, documented history of an encounter culture where law enforcement officers bypass the judicial process to act as judge, jury, and executioner. That day in Bilauti, the execution of a citizen was the final act of a system that had already failed him at every level.